Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. For those of you who joined us last week, welcome back. For those who didn't, my name is Sarah, and I'm here to talk to Jason Perry, the Managing Director at ASL Recruitment, about the questions people have surrounding COVID-19 and their employment rights. Jason himself is an HR specialist, and he is also a Chartered Fellow of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development. So you can be sure that you're going to be getting the right answers here. So if you have any questions for us, please put them in the chat box for us and we can get to those. We do have some that have been sent in earlier. So with no further ado, let me pass you over to Jason. Jason, are you there?
Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning, Jason. So, Jason, shall we start with questions, or do you have a comment that you would like to make first?
Yeah, if we go straight in with questions, there's a slight update on last week's, which as yet I don't have any detailed answers to, because the government did publish more details yesterday on the furlough scheme, and they've announced an alternative start date from February the 28th, which, if I recall correctly, is March the 19th. And they've announced it's going to be extended by a month, but I haven't had time to do a full analysis of that. So that changes a little bit of the answers. But no, let's go straight into questions from our temps and workers.
Okie dokies, here we go. My employer says I am not eligible for furlough as I only started work a few weeks before the pandemic all happened. Is there anything I can do?
Well, that really depends when they mean by a few weeks. And actually, as I just said, when the furlough scheme was initially announced, it was on the basis that anyone who was in work on the payroll on the 28th of February would be eligible. That's been changed, and if I recall correctly, the date is now anyone who's on the payroll on March the 19th is eligible. So it depends what you mean by a few weeks. But if you were on the payroll on those dates, then you are eligible for the furlough scheme, but it is for your employer to decide, the people who run the payroll, to decide whether to put you on it.
Okay, so it's actually date specific rather than length of working time specific.
Absolutely. It has no relation to how long you've been working there. It is all about whether you were on the payroll on that date. If you were on the payroll on that date and your job has ended as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, then you're eligible for furlough.
Great. Okay. Next question.
Okay.
I've been working as a temp since last year, and last week was fired because of the virus. My boss says temps can't be furloughed. Is she right?
Okay. The first thing I can say on that is I'm very clear that's not an ASL temp, because we have furloughed a number of our temporary workers. The answer is yes, temps are eligible. And we're back to this date again. So if the individual was working before the March date, which as I recall is March the 19th, then they are eligible. Temporary worker, permanent worker, 0 hours contract, anyone who is on a PAYE payroll is eligible for the scheme. So no, temps are totally eligible for furlough.
That'll be a big relief. I've been working as a cleaner for the last year and work has closed. I've been told they won't furlough me as they can't afford to pay me and wait for the government to pay them back. What can I do?
Okay, there's a few organisations that have been giving answers like this, and it tends to be the smaller employers, and there has been some concern about how they would fund the cash to pay their workers while they waited for the government to reimburse it. Now, the government have announced they're opening the computer system, the portal, to apply for furlough on Monday. They are suggesting that anyone who puts in an application on Monday will receive the payment in time for the end of month payroll at the end of April. So I don't think there is a very good reason for that. Having said that, some employers are choosing to operate a pay when paid furlough scheme. So they apply for the furlough payments from the government and they pay the workers or employees a little bit late once they've been reimbursed. So there is a way around it. It is possible. What I'd suggest you do is talk to your employer and ask them if they could look at that way. If they need some advice, suggest they call us. I'm more than happy to talk to employers. We're doing that regularly. I'm chairing a weekly employers conference video call where we're advising employers on how to do this. So it is solvable, but people sometimes need the right advice and a bit of support. Hopefully that helps.
My agency has offered me work for a couple of days next week, but it's loading furniture. And I'm worried we won't be able to keep far enough apart if two of us are lifting heavy boxes together. What should I do? So this one goes to the question of social distancing.
It does. And, there are some difficulties. It's quite easy for those of us who work in an office environment perhaps to make sure we're keeping 2 metres apart. There are workers that can do this. We've got some of our clients, one in particular springs to mind, where they have people travelling together in a vehicle to turn up on site. And there's a question of how you do it. Your face there was priceless, Sarah, but it's about how do we do that? We actually had a similar scenario last week where we had somebody, a few temps actually on a loading job. And we had a conversation with the client and said, we can supply you with the temps as long as you can provide them with adequate PPE and make sure they are given masks and clothing to, let's say, compensate for that lack of social distance. It's not ideal, but clearly if you're lifting a heavy item and it needs 2 people to lift it, some things there's not a way round. And we see supermarkets trying to put screens in place to shield their workers. 2 metres isn't always possible. Where it's not possible, an employer should take reasonable steps to keep their workers safe. And that's the best advice I can give there. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, so my boyfriend has been ill and I'm worried that he might have the virus. However, his boss says he still has to go to work unless he's been tested and tested positive. What's the score on that?
Okay. The answer is he really, really shouldn't be at work if you suspect he's got the virus. Test or no test, you should not be going to work if you have symptoms of the coronavirus. It's really blunt. You should be self-isolating for 7 days or until you're symptom-free. No ifs, no buts. This is about how we prevent the spread of the virus. And when you do that, you will be eligible for SSP from day one that you are self-isolating. Equally, if you have mild symptoms and you can work from home, there's no reason why you don't continue working. But you should not be going out to work. You should not be risking exposing other people to those symptoms you've got. Black and white answer, very simple.
So don't go to work if you suspect you have the virus, and don't go to the shops, and don't go to the doctor's surgery.
Don't go out. Stay at home. And isolate. Avoid all people.
So we just have time for one last question now. This person says, I've been working for ASL for a few months, but my boss no longer needs me. Will I be furloughed? You sort of answered that question already, but...
Obviously, I don't know who this is. I'm happy to talk to them in detail if they want to approach us. But the reality is, if their job, whether permanent or as a temporary worker, ends because of the COVID-19 crisis, then they are eligible to be furloughed. If somebody entered a 2-week assignment and the assignment simply came to an end, as temporary roles do from time to time, maybe they did a contract role that was for 6 months to cover, maternity leave or something like that, then they're not eligible. Furlough is very, very specific, and it is for people whose work has ended because of the COVID-19 crisis. So it would be difficult to say yes to that. It needs to actually have the reason, the justification that it relates to the coronavirus outbreak.
Right, okay. So that brings us nicely to a close then, Jason. Thank you very much to everybody who's tuned in today. And to everybody who submitted questions for Jason to answer. Thank you for your answers, Jason. Very succinct as usual. As you say, excuse me, things are changing on a daily basis almost, with new regulations coming in from the government, new guidelines and all the rest of it. So I think probably it would be a good idea to continue these sessions every Saturday at 10 a.m. And then if anybody does have any questions and they don't have the time or can't call into the office, and I mean telephone in, not actually physically call in, of course, then they can put their questions here. So Thank you, Jason. Do you have any last comments you would like to make?
No, I hope that's been useful. More than happy to continue these on a weekly basis. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay. Do remember, if any of you watching have any questions, you can get in touch with ASL at hastings@aslgroup.co.uk or give them a call on 01424 452 999. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next week.